Hi, this is Sahar Shunair, photojournalist and founding spokesperson of Stop Non-Consensual Experiments on All World Citizens. Honestly, I've always been interested in human interest photojournalism, and I really did not want to get too much into human rights photojournalism. I wanted to leave that to other people that I believe are better equipped for it, frankly. But for some years now, I have been focused on definitely an overlapping area. Not just human interest matters, but human rights matters, to do with stop non-consensual experimentation, stopping non-consensual human experimentation internationally. So, there has been a concerted effort to prevent me from being able to settle down in housing in New York City, actually my entire adult life. So I graduated from NYU. I love it. I first started being blatantly targeted by an organized criminal network engaged in many organized predatory activities that include human enslavement and trafficking. And their favorite tactic for that appears to be organized and assigned sexual and highly shielded sexual assaults. So I was one of several female scholars at University of Maryland, Baltimore County campus. I was there for my first 2 years of college. It's the reason I ended up transferring into NYU. Really, I'd always been hoping to end up in New York. I was always in love with New York since I was a little kid, with New York City, and I always wanted to settle there. But I had received a full merit scholarship as a university scholar, which is the highest scholarship based on merit that the university directly grants. And then I was fortunate enough when I transferred, I did also continue as a university scholar, but then of NYU, from where I graduated for undergraduate, and then had the honor and the privilege of also being the youngest in my business school class by several years on average to graduate from my MBA program there. I was already being interfered with, including by some people, unfortunately, that were actually employed by the university, not most. And I would not say that the university on the whole was in on this human enslavement and trafficking. But unfortunately, some things were being done, such as when I interned at the district attorney's office for my entire senior year. My supervisor warned me because I had an honor there too. I was the first person. She told me that they were so happy with my work from the first semester I was there that that's the first semester of my senior year, that they invited me to return to continue being their intern, because they only ever had one. So I continued being the one and only intern there throughout that entire academic year. And so basically they avoided doing that because they only have one intern there at a time in Witness Aid Services Unit. They want to give that opportunity to as many people as possible over time. So they had generally a policy of switching. But I always worked very hard, and I've always been very conscientious and meticulous. And so they wanted me to come back, and I was happy to go back, and I did. But she was in fact one of my recommenders when I was interested in attending law school. And the supervisor gave me, in addition to a very nice recommendation, she gave me an A+, the highest grade that one could give. And we had some kind of a stipend, but we didn't get income from that to speak of. It was really for credit. And she gave me the A+, the highest grade you could get. And I completed my requirements timely, and she submitted my paperwork timely. They were requiring it by fax at that time. It was not as common to email. And but my advisor at the university, that I was probably not randomly assigned to, but through this organized predators computer hacking and their manipulation of shepherding their targets that way, because in fact I witnessed this academic advisor targeting some other attractive minority international students, minority and international students that way in particular, that were scholars, female scholars in particular. He had some kind of at least a military background, and I had heard a military intelligence background. And so he absolutely was refusing to acknowledge receipt of the faxes that she sent him, and ultimately input that I finished the requirements. He input my requirements late, which basically was interpreted by the, at least interpreted, if he didn't also go further and say so, by, you know, the office that puts in the records, that I had finished my requirements late and therefore graduated late, which actually put me at risk of not being able to start my graduate school program in time. So, and in fact, that has never been fully addressed, because it's one of those things that's always upset me and I've always wanted to get to. But literally, these people, what they have done is apparently a tactic that they do to people being targeted this way, not just to me, is that all of my waking hours, full-time hours with overtime, no matter what else I'm doing, there's always some imminent threat that I have to contend with, of people being abusive and trying to frame me and so forth to make me easier prey. They want to get some kind of record on you or something. They want to get you so isolated from people so that they, as an entire network of these organized predators, can just have, you know, abuse you at whim and not have to worry about consequences. That is apparently their goal. And apparently they have quite a system and racket in place for it, and they're quite good at it. And especially since they have some corrupt law enforcement and government officials in with them. So I'm sure that many of those are not necessarily all gung-ho about it, but have been pocketed by the same kinds of tactics, you know, between being brainwashed and programmed and otherwise just, you know, coerced, gotten control over. But in any event, most recently, a reason I'm doing this right now, even though I don't feel I look so great, one thing I want to show to document, let me see what time it is. It's 12:08 in the morning now on March 31st, 2019. So basically, I'm at a stage where it's like there's a dreaded relief. I'm needing to respond to the most recent attempt to undermine my ability to even secure short to mid-term housing, because these people already have done a bang-up job at undermining my ability for the time being to secure long-term housing, or even to be willing to really try, because of some of the things they have done, stealing literally thousands of dollars from me at a time in exchange for nothing of value in return. In fact, quite the opposite. Like, they charge me for the privilege of being further abused and stolen from, having my belongings also compromised, etc. So one example is from less than a year ago. Let me go back a little bit. Let me come to the current reason I'm doing something now first, I think. So please forgive me, because I'm exhausted, and I like to normally try to be more organized and stuff, but in this situation and this time frame, I just have to go forward improvisationally as best as I can. I said a prayer to ask God to help guide me through, and just basically show that this is happening. And I think I've done that actually many, many times over for several years, but apparently I need to try again, because the official people are still acting like, you know, they hear no evil, see no evil, and in the meanwhile I still keep getting literally ganged up on by these organized predators, and they are dangerous. And with my age now, I know I don't look it, but I'm closer to 50 than to 40 now. So I really think that in these most recent poisonings that they surged since the beginning of January, their intention might not be so much, at least for a lot of them, might not be so much to try to gain the coercive control over me as to just murder me. It would not be the only time. It's not been the case most of the time, thank God. I don't doubt otherwise I'd be dead. But I am aware that in 2007 to 2008, and it probably started from at least 2006, it was probably basically 2006 coming into that 2007, definitely all of 2007 and into at least the first half of, continuing into through the first half of 2008, there was a contract on my life. It was by one of the organized predators' doctors. I can't narrow it much more than that, because they literally, I managed to get a lot of recordings during this surge of these people right close by me and having their meetings and stuff. And one of the things that they communicated amongst themselves was Dr. Five needed someone killed. So I can guess which are the basically two most likely candidates to have been referred to as Dr. Five. But unfortunately, I actually know more than 5 doctors in these organized predators, in this organized predators network that does the non-consensual human experimentation to brainwash and program to facilitate their human enslavement and trafficking. So really, it could have been any one of them. I mean, realistically. So unfortunately, that includes my parents, including deceased step-parent. And it includes, so it's at least 3 right there, because my people believed to be my biological parents, so that's 2, and the deceased step-parent, that's 3. They are definitely, they are all considered doctors. My person believed to be my father was not a medical doctor, but he was a high-level scientist, most focused on math, physics, and computer science. Overtly, but unfortunately his specialty was wetware programming. I will talk about that better at some future time. It's not my intention to delay for any particular reason or so. I can only myself deal with, trying to communicate about so much at a time. So there's that. So generally, I actually have a recording on my video playlist to the attention of government officials, including of the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee, that is entitled Dr. M. That's my stepfather that died in June 2016. Dr. M admits knowledge of secret medical society. So basically, though, that secret society of medical society refers to not only MDs, although it includes MDs, but and especially psychiatrists like my mother and stepfather, but it includes their scientists that also do the non-consensual experimentation, basically based on their specialty from one angle or the other, trying to gain and maintain coercive control over people's minds. Because once they have that, then they basically have control over the full person in every way, including physically, including physically, and unfortunately spiritually too. And I think that should be talked about more also in a future time. And I'm working on becoming more qualified to speak as to that, because the reason I don't speak very much about the spiritual aspect is I might qualify in that I've always endeavored to be a good person, and I think I've done a pretty good job at it. But I'm not very knowledgeable about ministry studies, metaphysical studies, formally, things like that. I've enrolled to be able to do that, but these people have kept me hopping, just trying to avoid being framed. So I have to deal with this first. Okay. One thing, so now most recently, I had years, I don't remember exactly how many now, of realizing that these people are not going to let me have some peace in a long-term rental contract. It will be just like trying to get out of a bad marriage. When you have, you signed on the dotted line and now you have this, this lease that's like 1 year or 2 years or what have you, generally 1 or 2 years, that you're obligated for, whether you really are able to live in that space yet or still or not. And in the meanwhile, they've done everything they can to make it uninhabitable and even dangerous for you. So then I started using Airbnb actually as my main source for housing for some years now. And I guess these people were very unhappy because I established, I had almost 20 reviews, and every single one of them were stellar reviews, and generally the same themes would recur that they would particularly point to. They'd say she's quiet, she's considerate, she's nice to communicate with. So, because whether, you know, I have something I need them to like address, if something was not working right or whatever, I don't believe in going and, you know, attacking people or whatever. I try to just, you know, approach them in as diplomatic a way as possible. Unfortunately, that's not how the organized predators communicate, but that's how I choose to communicate. So that's something that my hosts have repeatedly commented on, is that, you know, she's very pleasant to work with and communicate with, and quiet and considerate. So, unfortunately, since the beginning of January in New York City in particular, they really have gone all out this year, 2019, to create a hazardous breathing environment for me. They were actually making sure that there was a combination of neurotoxins, both from reproducing mold. I saw the relatively scientific term that they referred to it as in the literature. I think they call it volatile organic compounds. That's it, VOCs. And those are neurotoxic. So they've been doing that, and in addition, actually spraying some kind of toxic inhalant right under the door to the space I'm renting. So it was particularly outrageous at the place I was at in Sunnyside Gardens, and I had already paid in advance for that place for a month and a half to end on March 1st. Unfortunately, because of that situation going on and some related things that happened, including when I went walking outside from that apartment, much of the time I did not feel well enough to do that. But when I did, I was clearly being stalked by additional members of the network, and some of the common language and symbols and so forth let me know that unfortunately they were apparently working with the man in the apartment directly across from me there at Sunnyside Gardens that was actually spraying a toxic inhalant under the door to my apartment. I believe it was pesticide, but I can't yet know that for sure. I might be able still to determine that for sure, because I'm still hoping to find some legitimate intervention, and there are some samples that can be tested. But in the meanwhile, so now they've taken an opportunity basically to work on assassinating my character to make it more difficult for me to even be able to secure the short-term housing. They did not go so far as to try to claim that I actually, engage in some kind of illicit activities on the property or damage anything or anything like that, but they're trying to shift the blame of, one, the fact that they were freezing me, so at least they intended to, but I was fortunate that I had enough money. I was able to change to different Airbnb arrangements in New Jersey for the last 2 weeks. So I've not even felt well enough to put in any kind of request for a refund of any of my money for the Sunnyside Gardens place, and I might not even have been thinking to do so to really bother with it because of everything else that needs to be dealt with. But now this woman has actually, I guess, this is what happens when actually you let too many things go, I suppose, as far as, being willing to let them be bygones in the past. So she now has, she waited the 14 days because I guess she wanted to help not provoke me into writing what she was like as a host and what it was like to be there in that situation they set up to be so hazardous for me. So now she's trying to shift the blame of the fact that they had quite a caving in ceiling that was allowing rain to come in and feeding the mold problem. And she's trying to shift the blame to me as if she had no idea that that was the situation. It wasn't just caving in a little bit when I got there. And luckily, so I do, I do visual records, including video when I get to a place of anything going on, especially like that. And when I leave, to show that, leaving everything in good order. I make sure not to leave a piece of lint on the floor. So it really is just too much to swallow to then have these people come and keep trying to compound you know, to do all these attacks against me for no good or legitimate reason, for the worst of possible reasons, and then figure that, oh, you know, they'll just have a field day and then they'll just try to assassinate my character and blame me for them having poisoned me on top, you know, with the mold. And she wants to blame me also for the fact that she was freezing me, that she dropped the temperature down to the 50s in the middle of winter, freezing temperatures there. She claims that, you know, she's trying to make it sound like I was being paranoid about needing to open any windows, and that supposedly that caused her her system to shut down, or so. I think she tried to say shut off, but really there's a lot of, as is always the case when people lie, that's the reason I don't do it. I've watched a lot of CSI and Murder, She Wrote and stuff like that, and really I would never bother because there's always inconsistencies and things that can be found when people are lying. So it was not shut off. It had been turned down. Somebody turned it down, and most likely it was locked. I was not able to access it. So, you know, she was the host. She's probably the one who had remote control over it and turned it down to the 50s. So in any event, since I made another trip to Albany, and I'm going to have to be up probably till about like 3 o'clock Eastern time this morning to write a response to that woman, because what she wrote, because I just want to be on the safe side of the deadlines. I read that you have 30 days to respond. The booking was until March 1st, so it's just now become the 31st. They are in Pacific Standard Time, so I'm thinking I have until 3 in the morning here in Eastern Time. But, and this is just like yet another example of how these people basically have stolen all my time away from me. That I should, you know, I'm somebody who's never done anything bad to anybody. Literally, I feel comfortable to come right here in public with over 40,000 people following this now and say very confidently, I have never done anything bad to anybody. And I am almost 50 years old. And so I'm going to turn 48 this year in June. And these people have wasted what should have been times for me to be able to enjoy some life and be able to settle down and be able to start my own family and everything, instead having to constantly fend off attempts to frame me, to abduct me, sometimes to murder me, etc. I'm not okay with this. So, and I'm not okay with the fact that they're quite used to getting away with it on a very large, in fact, international scale, and to people from as young as they can get their hands on. I want to show a few things. It's kind of hard to pick, but I did pray about it and center myself, and basically I was guided to just kind of highlight 3 things here, so I'm going to do that. One is this picture. Let me see how well I can... I unfortunately couldn't get him in the center of the frame. I posted it the night it happened. It was the 21st. This man was wearing a mask. Let me see if I zoom in. If I zoom in, I can see it better. He was wearing a mask, and it was like a Halloween style mask that somebody would wear for Halloween time. This was March 21st evening in Albany, and he was coming in the direction of approaching me on an avenue that I think maybe was too predictable that I would be walking down, but also I think he would not have been able to do with the timing that he did, except for the unlawful surveillance and tracking of me, and stalking, and being coordinated. So he comes, you know, approaching right when I'm coming down this avenue in the one direction, and I was going to get something to eat. Well, I didn't get the picture the first time, and I thought, you know, maybe he was at, you know, like a masquerade event or something, right? But I you know, I asked and looked, and I haven't heard or seen of any kind of masquerade event that was taking place then, the evening of March 21st, 2019. So, surely enough, when I'm done eating, I'm coming back the other direction on the same avenue, and there he was again. And this is when I took this photograph, and I posted the exact times with the post. So that's from the night of March 21st. And then the white there, because I can tell it's a little blurry maybe, the white there is like the Halloween looking teeth. So, I mean, he was well disguised. I think these people were really lining up for an abduction. I meant to say one of the reasons I think so is I've come to pay very close attention to, my surroundings and stuff, thank God. So I think that's a reason I was not successfully abducted that night. And there was a white car. Now, I did not look that much to know if I can tell you if they had the deeply black tinted windows that I was told might be even illegal, that these people have a pattern of using disproportionately such deeply black tinted windows all the way around, including the fronts, including for where you could see the driver, including through the windshield, that it's so deeply black tinted that you can't see who or what's inside. And I've been told that at least in some jurisdictions that is illegal, but they have used those a lot. I've got a gazillion pictures of them using cars like that. This, I don't remember if that car, I was trying not to really look at them very conspicuously because they were driving alongside me as I was walking for a while. They were alongside me. And then when this guy approached, it might be because they saw me starting to like raise my camera phone, they sped off. They had no license plate on that car whatsoever. That's been a disproportionately, a pattern around me as well, with these people trying to at least abduct and get away with it, knowing that, especially in a place, in a significant city in New York State, actually not just New York City, but here in Albany, the state capital, there's so much surveillance, when you're outdoors and all, probably indoors too, but the street cams and the businesses cameras and everything, I don't see how anybody could, if they're planning, that they could think they could get away with abducting somebody off the street or so, unless they're doing this. Basically, they got somebody there having, from head to toe covered up as far as their real appearance, including a mask that's like for Halloween occasion, but in March 21st, 2019 evening. And they've got a car, probably did have the black tinted windows so you could not really see to identify who or what's inside, and no license plate whatsoever. So it scared me enough that even though I don't have a situation right now to prepare my own food and stuff, so I basically am needing to go out to get my meals, which I generally like to do anyway, but also right now, like, I just have a little mini fridge and I don't have a microwave and stuff, so I generally go out to eat and I don't really have food in here to speak of. And there's one other reason too, but I think it's better to go into that afterwards. But so right now, optimally, it's optimal if people were not trying to grab me to go out to get something to eat. It actually is. There's more than one reason that it would be optimal for me to just go out and eat. So I actually starved for most of the time in between, from that night of March 21st until I went out again March 25th. The night of March 25th, as soon as I turn onto that avenue again, I saw somebody that I believe was the same person popping right around the corner from a restaurant, not the restaurant I'd eaten at, but a restaurant there on that avenue, and walking toward me again. And he was whistling in a very creepy way. Not like a cat call, just like, reminded me of Kill Bill, honestly. I think maybe Volume 2. And when Daryl Hannah was whistling, I love Daryl Hannah, but her character, when she was whistling, walking down the hallway of the hospital because she knew she was getting ready to go and kill Uma Thurman's character, that's what it sounded like. So either he was trying to taunt me or he was testing to see if I recognized him, or both. I think maybe that's very strongly what I felt like, and I've learned not to discount my my intuition and all. And unfortunately, the build and even the shoes, there was like black shoes on top with the white outer soles from underneath that caused like a white contrast edging from along the bottom. They looked the same. Now, this person was not wearing a mask on this occasion. I did not feel like staring at him, making eye contact or what have you, and I did not try to get a picture of him when he was not wearing a mask. I made a note of the precise, down to the minute, time and everything, because I know, again, this place is so surveilled that when, you know, I mean, without any kind of legitimate government intervention and law enforcement intervention as part of government intervention, then, you know, I mean, there's only so much I could do about it, or there's not much I can do about it anyway. With proper intervention, with the time and date and the location and all, they can look at the surveillance and they can see, they might be able to actually determine with 100% certainty if it was the same person. So I'm hopeful, but we do have to get some real legitimate intervention for these things to be addressed and dealt with properly. So that's one of the three things. The second of three things, let's see here. The people believed to be my mother and stepfather that are government contracted psychiatrists apparently involved, unfortunately, in these activities with regard to traumatizing people out of our right mind so that they can prime us that way for brainwashing and programming, in order to then have basically, you know, zombies, people that can't think for themselves, so then they're just enslaved, and their human enslavement trafficking network does what they want with them whenever they want. That's the idea, apparently, unfortunately. So they specialized in behavior modification, which is the umbrella category for these types of atrocities, such as MKUltra. So they were, not for the only time, trying to frame me. And so this was an evening that we'd spent till late at the office, which is typical, into like at least about midnight, if not a little bit past midnight, into the early hours of the morning. And so when we finally got out of the office, I mean, think about this, how much of it, like, it's not enough that I basically have no life and don't cause any trouble and help people get things done and whatever. No, not enough, because I can still think for myself. So they've got to try to, you know, abuse and frame me and everything too. So, so after we ended doing stuff at the office for a very long day, into the, at least about midnight, if not into early morning, then there's only so many places that were open nearby to eat, you know, nearby and on the way back to the house to hopefully get some sleep. So only to be able to start it all over again the next day. So in any event, so we stopped at the Applebee's, and I don't drink alcohol at all. And they know this. They absolutely know this. So in addition, I actually spent my dinner with them. It's not like I was on a date or anything. I was there, had been stuck at the office with them during the day and all through the night, and as far as through the evening. And then come about midnight, wee hours in the morning, we're over at Applebee's to get something to eat. I didn't drink any alcohol at all, which is no surprise to them because they also know I just don't drink alcohol at all. And lo and behold, they were trying to frame me with some people who were dressed as law enforcement, but might have been PSYOPs, psychological operations, people that have been allowed to dress as any number of things, including law enforcement, that as if I might have provided grounds to be arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol. Should I exercise the independence of driving myself home in the car with which I had driven myself to work and having legitimately a valid active driver's license? So these are people who've gone out of their way to undermine my freedoms illegitimately, to undermine freedoms that everyone just rightfully has, unless they actually would do something to deserve to have them taken away. So I'm just going to play, I think it won't take more than about a minute. I'm starting it at 13 minutes and 50 seconds in, and if I remember right, this segment of this video ends at about 15 minutes and change of them carrying on with this. And unfortunately, several other instances, even in this video, that they're carrying on this way. So,
windshield, so I was wiping down the windshield, the inside of the windshield, with the frost off so I could see before I tried to drive out of the parking lot.
You were watching, you got it.
They were watching you. Well, they were reason to make sure I could see before I started driving. That's not what they were watching for. What I'm saying is, whether they were watching or not, I can't be safely driving until I can see.
Sahara, you might have had a chance to explain to them, but you might not have. I couldn't tell what you were doing.
I didn't know what you were doing. Well, somebody asked me, I could have told them and shown them the napkins too.
Why do you want to be asked?
For you to ask. They don't ask me. I don't want to be asked. I need to be able to see before I drive off.
That's true, but they're going to smell alcohol.
Maybe I should give it a little more context. In fact, because it's also unpleasant and stuff, and there's been such bombardment, I haven't revisited this in a while myself as far as listening to the audio. But it's the featured audio in a note I recently reposted called Setups Need to Stop to Let Me Relocate and Live Peacefully. So basically, it's the one with the teddy bear in the cover picture with the Serenity Prayer. This just goes to show basically that you don't have to do anything to get this kind of harassment and all and setups, because it's a scripts that they're following. They're planning to do this no matter what. So don't bother kicking yourself when you get subjected to these things that, oh, only if you had done this other thing instead or not done this one thing or whatever. When they're planning to do this stuff to you, they're going to just try to force the script on you regardless. That's what frame-ups are. So, so basically, their excuse on this occasion they were using is that I had been taking some time, not a lot of time, just whatever time it takes to wipe off the, there was frost, I guess maybe the proper word is condensation, on the inside of the windshield. This was on the inside that I was worried about, not on the outside. So I could not just use the windshield wipers. I was literally wiping it away with a napkin. So that's what they're carrying on about. Oh, they won't. Police, they can't tell what you were doing, and they might arrest you for driving under the influence because you're doing something, you know, so suspicious that you're wiping off the inside of the windshield so that you could see before you go driving. You see how that catch-22 would work? So if I, and they were trying to pressure me live in real time. My stepfather was calling me, trying to stop me from wiping off the inside of the windshield so I could actually have visibility to drive, telling me that, oh, you're taking too long and it looks really suspicious and those police are going to get you and this and that. So if I had actually, you know, couldn't, and I was very tired, they made sure of that. So I think that was part of the setup, actually, sleep deprived. But thankfully, God still helped me to guide me and let me be able to think clearly enough and be able to drive safely and everything. If I was just a little bit, had been pushed a little bit further down to the wrong end of my condition and stuff at that time, then I might have felt like, you know, I might have, especially them being my parents, you know, how you're used to kind of listening to your parents, especially if you're not a particularly rebellious person or whatever. And I was always like what they called a goody-goody, whatever. So I don't just like, you know, do things to be, quote, rebellious for the sake of it or anything like that. I never have been that way. So, but they, you know, but I'm not willing to let people just frame me. So I guess if they consider that rebellious and wayward and whatever, well, you know, so be it. But they basically, I'm not willing to let them push me into doing ignorant things, you know, or things that are not right for me, or, you know, or just not right and what have you. So if they had succeeded in pushing me into trying to go driving out of the parking lot when I can't even see, then surely I would have crashed into something. Hopefully not involving anybody else, but then they would have had grounds to arrest me for something in that regard, right? At least reckless driving, and if they wanted to claim it was due to, you know, intoxication, then, you know, driving under the influence of some kind of, you know, alcohol or some other kind of substance or something. But thank God I did not let them press me into just driving off, even though I couldn't see yet. So that's what's going on here, so. Let me go back a little bit, sorry. I think I interrupted it when he was saying, oh, they'll smell alcohol. And I said, not from me. And he said, they won't know who it's from. Hold on. hold on. Sorry about there. Okay.
That's why I was wiping down the windshield, the inside of the windshield, to get the frost off so I could see before I tried to grab out of the parking lot.
They were watching you guys.
They were watching you. Well, all the more reason to make sure I could see before I started driving.
They didn't know
That's
that.
not what they were watching for. What I'm saying is, whether they were watching or not, I can't be safely driving until I can see.
So, Hart, you might have had a chance to explain to them, but you might not have. I couldn't tell what you were doing.
I didn't know what you were doing. Well, somebody asked me, I could have told them and shown them the napkins too.
Why do you want to be asked?
They don't ask me. I don't want to be asked. I need to be able to see before I drive off.
That's true, but they're going to smell alcohol.
Not from me.
They won't know who it's from.
They just watched you.
So there's more minutes of that. If you want to hear the whole video, it's linked from the top of that SnoEOawc note that was shared again recently, and it's called "Setups Need to Stop to Let Me Relocate and Live Peacefully." And then let's see, that's 2 of 3 that I was guided to share tonight. I'm probably going to redo this whole video. I'm so sorry because I feel like it is too disorganized. But let me go to 3 of 3. And I should say it won't really be a redo. I'll probably do like an organized version of this video maybe. So one of the places I actually did find through Airbnb, but in fairness, I'm actually really not thinking that it's legitimate Airbnb officials that are in, with this network to be causing me this grief. I think that I know that there are signs that computer hackers have gotten into the mix, and they've done some things that actually even show, that at least indicate that, if not outright show that. Actually, some of those things do show that. Like, there was a communication I had with somebody who was supposed to be from Airbnb support, and they decided to disappear some of that communication from the thread. But I was able to show clearly on the video that they did that somebody did that. And I'm not able to do it. Like, from my end, I can't just go and delete something sent to me by Airbnb support in that Airbnb support thread within the Airbnb app. So I had found out about it. It's coming back to me now. I'd found out about it in this particular case because of a copy that was sent to my email. So if I hadn't come across the copy and read the copy, then I would never have known that I'd gotten a response that was supposed to have come from this person from Airbnb support that was sniped out of the Airbnb or pseudo Airbnb support interaction thread there, written communication thread. So, and that's actually a relatively minor instance of clearly something, things not, some illegitimate things happening with regard to my communications for my housing, and much, even at least as dangerously for my, there's been interference with my car rides as well, my drivers, that I don't necessarily, I'm not necessarily thinking have to do with the drivers, in at least the cases I'm thinking of. There was at least one driver that something was suspicious there. They were using an out-of-state plate, and they had covered up where there's supposed to be a registration sticker. So I've just, I've come to start paying attention to those kinds of details. And when people are, I've also seen a disproportionate number of tampered with license plates and photographed those and uploaded those. In some cases, video recorded those and uploaded those. People don't do that, for like no reason, and they don't do that for legitimate reason. If they're going to the trouble to basically cover up identifying characteristics of the vehicle they're driving, stuff like that, like either driving now with no license plate, which also is illegal, or driving with a tampered with license plate, or covering up or a lot of times covering up the most recent date of their registration sticker. It's to give themselves a better chance to get away with some criminal activity that they're planning. So, like abducting somebody and hoping that it won't be tracked back to them despite street surveillance, that kind of thing. Anyway, and so twice now, in fact, both times when I was at the Sunnyside Garden Airbnb, my driver was redirected. I would say all I can think of was with courtesy of the organized predators computer hackers to the gates of the same cemetery in New York City. There in Queens, it's St. Michael's Cemetery. So my Instacart driver was redirected to there and detained there according to the monitoring that I could see, and I made a video record of it and all. So I called to people that hopefully were real Instacart people, but the call might well have been routed to, you know, just people, actors, you know, PSYOPs actors, you know, for this network. So yeah, so that happened to an Instacart driver that was bringing food. So luckily the food did not seem to be tampered with, but that was disturbing. And then when I left that Airbnb and I was going to the, on the way to the Lyft car was to take me to the storage facility, my storage facility there in Queens. And they did take me there, but not before there was an uncomfortable stop in front of the gates of St. Michael's Cemetery. So I really, you know, that's the kind of cuteness, they think it's cute, that these organized predators engage in. So that's a way of them to issue basically death threats to me without, you know, having some idiot be in my face threatening like that, especially since they know I'm quick to use a recorder now. So let's see, that would be on March 1st with regard to that Lyft ride, March 1st, 2019. So now this is a recording from June 4th, 2017. This is a place at this time I was not renting directly through Airbnb, but I had found the place through Airbnb, a different unit in this house. And then they told me, you know, that they were opening up a room that would be more appropriate for me to stay as far as a long-term stay, because they had fixed up the room I had initially stayed in for short-term stays. And it was in the basement, and there was a lot of like pipes that were either inadvertently bang a lot, or maybe now that I know more of what's been going on, maybe some deliberate banging on those pipes and stuff too, to make it, you know, quite a neurologically battering environment to stay very long term in that basement. But they so they are, you know, in any case, so they offered me to rent long term, midterm to long term, a room, you know, up on a higher floor. And you know, so basically one day, it was actually the day immediately following when I took some photographs that I think made these people nervous of some of the stalking vehicles with Maryland license plate. I remember particular, they had disproportionately Pennsylvania there at that location. But on that night, I remember I was very concerned about a vehicle that was suspicious because of the deeply black tinted windows and all, and with a Maryland license plate, at least one, it might have been more than one, and right there, like they were positioned to be stalking me from the street, to be looking right, you know, to where my bedroom window was and all. So, and definitely there was, I documented a pattern of this network engaged in that kind of activity, actually at multiple locations, including that one. And I was there for several months. And so now come for the next morning, I don't remember exactly the timing as far as by the hour, things like that. But what was going on here on June 4th is I had just given them recently, like I said, I might have actually given it to them, like say the day before or something like that. No, probably for the 1st of June, because I'd given them one month's notice or 30 days notice that I would leave. And oh yes, I'm remembering more about it now. And I have the pictures to support it. It was another situation where it seemed like the people were deliberately trying to grow mold to create a neurotoxic environment for me. So, and I'd given them opportunities to fix it. I had asked very nicely, and I had paid to go stay someplace else while I was still paying on this apartment, and did not ask for money back for the time in between or to reimburse me for having to stay someplace else or anything like that, because I was still hoping for a long-term place to be able to work out. And if it was going to work out for me, it would have been worth the money, you know, to just not, make an issue out of a relatively short window of time where it's really not habitable. If for the most part it would have been habitable. But unfortunately, I gave them more than one opportunity. I remember clearly giving them 2. I don't know. I generally have up to a 3 times policy on a lot of things. But in that kind of, because of that particular situation being such a health hazard, I probably did not go for the 3rd. But I remember distinctly for sure I gave them 2 opportunities that I went and stayed someplace else for at least some days. Where they had promised they were going to resolve the situation to stop. Again, it was a situation where their roof was leaking. And that roof had previously actually had caved in. Fortunately not when I actually was staying there. It had happened before I stayed there to some previous tenant. I believe there was a previous tenant there when it happened, is what I'd been told by another person that was renting from another room in that house. And they'd like patched it up, but I guess, it wasn't like the best patch-up job or whatever. I suspect the husband had like done it himself, even though he wasn't really qualified to do it. So that was the situation anyway. And they had the bathroom was carpeted. It was fully carpeted. And, I didn't, now I kind of laugh because I see that that's kind of part of the setup if you want to, make the breathing environment hazardous that way for somebody, and you set up for, leaking situation and stuff, and then in the bathroom is, a primary area affected by this, and you make it all carpeted so that as this is going on and you neglect it, then it's just the most conducive environment to the most hazardous breathing situation from that mold that you're growing, for the person to have to breathe in the reproducing mold, those volatile organic compounds. So that was going on. I gave the 30 days notice. We had clearly agreed in writing. Now, I hadn't dealt with him. Mind you, I dealt with his wife, who was much more diplomatic in dealing with me and all. And in fact, we became friends, she and I. And actually, long story short, I believe they're not necessarily even together anymore and everything. I don't, but I don't know what all the reasons might be or whatever. So, and that's their personal business, I believe. Unless, I don't know what all the reasons were, if any of them overlap with the situation. But, so when I had, the wife and I had done the written contract, we both agreed and we both signed on this for 30 days by either party to be able to end, it would just be like ongoing until 30 days notice, and then it would be to terminate the contract of ongoing rental. So I'd given the 30 days notice. He did not want to let me out of the contract, or he'd been assigned to cause me whatever, inflict any additional abuses, some particular things, as he specifically mentioned SnoEOawc. I was surprised by that. I don't remember if it's actually in this section that I thought I'd highlight here. It's a kind of an intact segment within that whole, over 7 minutes of abuse. Actually over 8 minutes of abuse. But I thought, so people can really hear the kind of stuff that's gone on. It's like he was threatening about court and everything. What are you going to threaten? I paid all the rent for all the time that either me or any of my things was there, or I was contractually there. Like, I paid for with the 30 days notice, and in that last 30 days, most of those last 3 days, I was not there. Several days more than once. Other times before, I was not there because they had made it uninhabitable, and I was having to pay to be someplace else. I paid for all that time between. I literally paid without a gap the whole time from the time I started being there till the end. And so there was never anything that could even be made out to look like financial irresponsibility on my part. I did absolutely no damage to any property. I was quiet. I was considerate. I didn't do anything that would cause them any problem whatsoever, like either with the law or just in any other way. Quite the contrary. They were setting up the situation to be uninhabitable. But apparently these people don't think that, as far as when I say these people, I mean this network, the way they operate, they think they should be able to do it and do it and do it. They're used to doing it. They don't think, and they feel very entitled, and they don't think that somebody they're targeting in this way should have any right or ability to say, okay, I'm going to have to go someplace else then. They want to make sure to do everything to prevent me from having that ability. So, if it means, I know people are more used to hearing about this with regard to like abusive, narcissistic, sociopathic ex-husbands and ex-wives, things like that. But unfortunately, these people as a network of organized predators, they do that. So it doesn't have to be that personal of a relationship. They're apparently assigned. And they have scripts, and they follow these scripts. So he was going off, and this is what was going on. And I think I will mention, I was doing very well with stock options, and I had begged him because he was interrupting me in the middle of the stock market that day. And, look, if he wants to talk, because he suddenly, wants to come and see about this mold. If he wants to suddenly come and see about the mold or something, please do it after the market closes. He didn't do that. Stock options move very quickly, exponentially, versus regular stock. They can, and in this case, this was happening. And these people doing all of these things, it actually cost me, I've not said this publicly before, it cost me tens of thousands of dollars. And I'm totally fine going on the record saying that right now. I have the documentation to show I was making good money doing these stock options, to the point that I was hopeful that if I needed to, to pursue from a different angle for legitimate income, that I could show it to like a financial company how well I was doing with the stock options over a good period of time. And then they caused this situation, and literally tens of thousands of dollars I just lost just like that. And these people are not satisfied. They're never satisfied. Because I guess I'm still alive. I'm still kicking. I'm still able to say, no, you're not going to force me to do anything that I'm not willing to do. Things like that. So as far as that requires my cooperation, having people come and be seated, set up to so where they get seated behind me on an airplane flight, so they could be kicking my spine through the chair to exacerbate spine injury that these organized predators already caused. That's a situation I don't want to be in, but I didn't have, a lot of control over that situation to prevent that. But as far as anything that would require my cooperation, I still always tell them where they can go. So basically, hopefully to like a closet where they don't actually harm or bother anybody outside of themselves. So, if not, someplace much more fiery. So, but in any event, so this is the, there's nothing really to see on this one. It's just to hear.
The contract allows 30 days notice by either party to terminate. I gave mine, so stop making things up.
Stop being stupid, you stupid.
Stop making things up.
Go chase some crazy people. That's what you need to do. Go to Manhattan and go get some free food. That's what you need to do. But I can deal with it, man. This stupid bitch come here and talking all this shit on my head and talking all this shit. After people being kind to you, that's why your mother don't even talk to you. You calling the IRS on your own friggin' mother. Then no wonder why nobody wants to be around some stupid ass bitch like you.
Okay, I've never been verbally abusive to anybody in there. Well, and I'm hard pressed to think if I know people have tempted me sometimes to like swear at them or say. It's not something that it's not something that I do as a habit, and I want to be 100, because I know these people, they have their sleazy investigators and all. I'm trying to think if ever, like when I was a teenager, I ever told anybody, ever swore at them or something. I actually don't even think so. But in any event, I definitely never did anything as far as swearing or anything verbally abusive to anybody in this household, never to this man or anything, not to his wife, not to his children, you know, not to any of the other renters in the house, nothing. And there he was, you know, but he feels entitled to be, you know, verbally abusing me and all like that. And the thing he says about the IRS on my mother, I really don't know where that came from. Again, that would indicate something. I guess he got some misinformation, something that was in the script that he was supposed to be throwing my way or so, or that he thought he had knowledge about, because when he sat there with, you know, in a meeting with other organized predators, they thought they knew something about me calling the IRS on my mother or something. That's never happened. What I think they might be thinking about is there is a situation, and or was a situation where she had some legal troubles, she and my stepfather, with regard to Medicare and or Medicaid fraud. She literally, you know, I mean, she'll, you know, kind of, it's the same kind of mentality as somebody who would just totally try to manufacture that maybe her daughter has given grounds to be arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol when she knows that that I was not drinking any alcohol. So, I mean, you know, what can I say? You can only, you know, I don't like to go around saying bad things about her, and I certainly, especially not just for the sake of it or so, but I mean, you know, some of the behaviors, you know, what can you say about them? So, so basically it was a situation where she was making up psychiatric notes about somebody. So, other than me. So I only laugh partly because apparently that person wasn't really hurt by it, at least not, you know, in an obvious kind of way, because they were dead. So that's what happened. She was making up some kind of psychiatric notes about some patient that was already dead. Because, you know, writing it up as if she evaluated them on a date when they were no longer alive, so that could not have happened. And somebody else, you know, some other doctor reported her for that and whatever. But mind you, oh geez, okay, so, well, these people already harass me, and I know they're very, very relentless about it, but let me say, this other doctor, which helps to show that they're, what's the word I'm looking for? What they claim to be their religion is basically just for the sake of manipulations and not necessarily what they believe. So this other doctor apparently had Scientology ties. So basically, apparently certain organizations and certain doctors and all are particularly, they seem to be basically competing for the same kind of contracts, maybe even not just the same kinds of contracts, but for the exact same contracts, for gaining and maintaining coercive control over people's minds to facilitate this particularly shielded human enslavement and trafficking network that includes corrupt government officials, including corrupt law enforcement officials, to facilitate their human enslavement and human trafficking activities. So it's quite the racket they have going, because they get you know, some of these organizations, like, you know, certain churches and whatever, they get their nonprofit status. They don't have to pay taxes, and then in these kinds of situations, there's also government contracts that get awarded. It seems like some covert funding on top. So really, it was kind of like, I think that saying is like the kettle, the pot calling the kettle. I'm not great about remembering a lot of these sayings, but the pot calling the kettle black or something, and like basically competing factions among less than ethical parties that basically they're trying to like knock out their competition or knock down their competition, but they're up to, you know, their own things. So I think I'm not going to elaborate on that. So okay, so but I'm sure you understand what I'm saying, and so then I'll continue there.
I don't even know what you're talking about, but you need to get away from my door and stop verbally abusing me right now.
In my apartment.
Stop verbally abusing me.
Who's that? Nobody want to verbally abuse some stupid shit like you. Go find some SnoEOawc people and chase them down. That's what you need.
Yeah, I thought I remembered that he specifically mentioned SnoEOawc, so I found that interesting also. And in fact, apparently there's some laws that are specific to that, because apparently it's enough of a pattern in some of these kinds of activities where people are being subjected to certain activities when they're trying to just peacefully settle into housing that include being targeted because of your work. And that's obviously something I've been targeted for. So, like I said, really though, I don't want anybody to feel like me trying to help raise awareness on these matters is what's causing, you know, these people to be going after me. I'm sure it doesn't help, but really, literally, before I knew enough about any of these activities to be trying to raise awareness about them and get, you know, gain legitimate government intervention and so forth, that would be something of concern to these people that want to just keep having their free-for-all to violate all sorts of human rights and stuff. They were targeting me anyway. And in this situation, sadly, it's very obvious to me that the reason the person believed to be my mother. So somebody asked me when I say that, do I mean like just by other people? No, I mean by me too. Like, as far as I know, she's my mother, but all these things have made me question whether she's my biological mother. So I say, you know, she's believed but not known to be my mother. She's the only one I've known, you know, throughout my life as my mother. And she insists that she is my biological mother, but I'm really gotten increasingly uncertain about that. But in any event, I don't blame her nearly as much as I do the person believed to be my biological father, because he started targeting her during her first year of college, when the serial rapist that targeted me and other scholars, female scholars similarly targeted at University of Maryland. I was a first-year student. In my case, I was 18, also a multiple of 6 year. These people have tended to surge. It seems to be a satanic ritual surge in their organized predatory activities during multiple of 6 years. I definitely know that now to be a pattern, not just for me. So this is a reason I'm having trouble. I have to be extra careful this year, because this is a multiple of 6 birthday year for me, that I'm to turn 48. 2007, when they were, you know, the height of them, actually, like when I would be going to walk across the street, I had to be extra careful because some car that was stalking there around the corner would come, you know, just, you know, speeding out, trying to actually run me over. And then it was after that I heard them referring to the, you know, they were caught referring to the Dr. 5 needed someone killed. So apparently they really meant to run me over in order to kill me. And not just to, you know, say like, give me enough of a hit that they could abduct me or something like that, you know. So these surges have been, especially in the exact multiple of 6 birthday year, and in the year immediately preceding it, coming into it, and the year immediately coming out of it. And this is a reason that so much was going on from, you know, both in 2007, that was a multiple of 6 year, and really coming into it from 2006 and leading out to it from 2008. That's when in that time frame, by the middle of 2007, is when I started regularly posting publicly, because one good thing that came out of it was so abundant, all these events, that the patterns, a lot of patterns became very conspicuous and also recordable. Because I had spoken to some journalists before, and they said, well, you know, we know it's dangerous and whatever, but, and maybe not, you know, and also, you know, some of them acknowledge, like, not fair, but, you know, a lot of these things you're going to have to basically record them to show people that they're happening. So I said, okay. So I started recording them. It became actually not very hard to come by, being able to do these recordings, because the way they were just like, I couldn't go out even one time without something really conspicuous happening, especially in that time frame. It settled down to some extent for a while. but it's flared up for every multiple of 6 birthday since, to a life-threatening extent, as is going on right now for the year I'm to turn 48. I probably should try to say that more optimistically, right? For this year that I will turn 48. So, and so when I was 18, which is, I believe, also the same age of the other female scholars that had been raped by this Luciferian, I say satanic, they say Luciferian, they think it's better. Okay, so I don't really agree, by the way, and I think it's just really a euphemism, but I'm not an insider to that, so they might have some point there. I don't think so, but I don't know enough to say on that. But I mean, he was actually called Beelzebub by the satanic, or they would say Luciferian, semi-secret society he was leading on campus. And just like I was in a multiple of 6 year, my first year of college, when he targeted me in this way, I believe, I'm not 100% sure about the other people. 4 people came forward and testified, and there were some other people I heard about that had been targeted this way, either by him or somebody else in his semi-secret society with military intelligence, strong military intelligence connections. And he, but I believe they were all also in their first year of college, which would also probably have made them all in their, age 18. So another, also I think the multiple of 6 issue may have applied to them as well. But I've been so busy trying to do the stuff I had to do most immediately. That is one of those things I'd like to go back and really track down. Like I would like to go back and straighten out the record of when my internship at the New York District Attorney's Office was completed, which was, the same time as anybody else's work for the academic year on time. So, I mean, at least the vast majority. Mine was not late. It was on time, and it should have been recorded accordingly. So, but, with people surging things to where they're trying to frame you and trying to abduct you and so forth, the list of those things I need to go back. I would like, that bother me, how that, because they're not just and they're not correct and that need to be corrected, has, despite my best efforts, that list has accumulated. So, like, I'm dealing with this thing tonight. I have, it's like 1:13 in the morning now, so I have until like 3 o'clock in the morning that I'm going to try to nip that situation in the bud as much as possible too. And it probably will actually be nipped in the bud, but it'll be just yet another thing of countless things like this that have just, caused extreme emotional distress, have caused also, especially at a time when I'm recovering from the poisons, they've caused physiological stress that I especially should not be getting inflicted, is especially dangerous right now. I'm still recovering from the poisons that were being sprayed by the person there at that Sunnyside Gardens Airbnb. And in fact, one of the things that they're cute with when they spray and they go along their way for the day, when they go out to work and you're stuck inside because you're trying to do the work they're trying to do is on the inside, or should have been able to do. It should have been something you were able to do on the inside of the apartment. So I've always made that clear. I'm looking for some place that is important to have, like a peaceful workspace, a place that I can work inside the apartment. So like a living space and a place to get my work on the computer done. And they've been absolutely making sure to prevent me from being able to do really either. Like make it uninhabitable, so I can't even just breathe, literally breathe there safely, much less live there and concentrate to get any work done there, etc. But yeah, so let me see. I think that might be everything for tonight, especially since I think this is on the long side. But yeah, I mean, basically, this is just, I've lost count of the examples, and when this, let's say it does get nipped in the bud, because historically most of these things, that's what's happened, because I have to gather up all my documentation, or at least a good chunk of it, whatever, a critical mass of it, and prove once again that I am in fact not guilty, that I am innocent. You know, I have to prove it over and over and over again, because I keep getting these attempts to frame me and defame me, and worse. You know, well, the full list is to frame, to defame, to abduct, to falsely imprison, to assault, and at times even to murder. So before you know it, you know, they play a game because they've not successfully framed me for any crime, etc., despite having tried multiple times. So that puts me in a situation I was mentioning to a friend earlier. I mean, I'm not complaining about it, but I'm just saying one of the aspects of this that's hopefully I'm hoping to get something done about it on a mass scale, is that there's basically no program. As far as I know, and I've looked very thoroughly, so I'm like at least 99% sure that there is no program in place to help somebody in this situation with regard to the framing attempts. For example, I was in touch with Legal Aid, and they have some programs that are, funded with government grants, and lawyers, so that say, apparently it is a common tactic, and I did not know this before, but I know it now, for these organized predators engaged in human enslavement and trafficking to frame their targets. So, well, it accomplishes more than one thing, right? To their benefit and to the target's detriment, the detriment of the person they're targeting. And one of those things is, imagine how much harder it would be to compete for legitimate employment with a criminal record. Doesn't matter if it was a frame-up job, as long as it's really on the record, because, you know, people believe what's on the record, like they believe what they hear, you know, or they used to believe what they hear on TV news and whatever, you know. So if that's what it says, then that's what they believe. That's what the person is stuck with, trying to get legitimately employed with a criminal record for, say, prostitution, when very likely they were in fact enslaved and trafficked. But instead of going after the people that enslaved them, that sold them and or rented them out repeatedly, or paid to have access to rape them as they please, or to purchase them or whatever against the will of this human being that had all of their human rights violated in these ways. These people set up quite the racket where, you know, they put all the blame on the person and people targeted. I mean, most of who's paid the price is like a lot of young women, you know, like teenage girls. And I think people know enough by now to know that they're not the ones at the top of being responsible for human enslavement and trafficking activities. So, but in any event, but if they've been actually framed to where they actually have a criminal record, then there are programs in place for people to help them get that record expunged and move forward from there. But when you've had to fend off attempt after attempt to frame you, but they have not succeeded in getting some criminal record against you, unfortunately, you fall in between the cracks of help that's available for connected activities in that regard. So, and they also get to say, oh, what are you complaining about? You know, because on paper you have a great record and this and that. How did they really, you know, cause you harm to your, you know, to you professionally, etc., whatever. So, but this is how, because it is now 1:19 in the morning, and instead of being able to have enjoyed the day and the evening and get a good night's sleep and everything, I'm under this distress, and I have to now write a response to the most recent attempt to at the least defame me. And honestly, if it's not nipped in the bud, a lot of the attempts to defame are setups to be escalated into attempts to frame. Because the next thing, you know, if it's not nipped in the bud, should probably, you know, not just a she, but for the they, you know, just operating through this particular woman that was supposed to be hosting, maybe very well a front host, because more than once I've come across people that claim to be like an owner for a property or so, and then found out that they were not actually the owner, they were like the front owner. So that's been another thing that's happened disproportionately with these activities. But so that's a red flag. But yeah, so she's the owner or the front owner. I've not been able to check yet, time-wise and energy-wise, into things in that regard. So, but yeah, then the next thing, you know, she gets away with, say, defrauding more money out of me by shifting the blame for making the place uninhabitable for me, despite taking my money already for, you know, the full duration that I should have been able to live there, but was not able because of the uninhabitability they caused. If she's successful with that, then the next thing, I'm sure, you know, very likely she could push for, oh, you know, criminal negligence or whatever, you know, I don't know what exactly they come up with, but literally, you know, a lot of times they really will keep escalating and escalating, and you know, that's a reason to not just let those things go as best as you can. I mean, I know you can't catch everything when you're being bombarded like this left and right, day in, day out, year after year, your whole life, from the time you're a kid. But yeah, that's something to be aware of. And oh, I think, let me see something. There were two things I was going to mention. I like to try to make sure to wrap up all the thoughts that kind of also come to me in a session. So one is that the person believed to be my mother, when she started getting targeted by the person believed to be my father on behalf of this network, and she really, because it's multi-generational from before her too, so probably there were things going on her whole life leading up to that as well. But she was in her first year of college, and in her case, she was so academically advanced and all that she was only 12 years old. And that's not, I'll repeat it, I meant to say 12. A lot of people ask me, like, say that again. She was 12 years old for her first year of university. And she graduated 4 years later. She took the same amount of time as everybody else, but she started 6 years sooner. So she started at 12 and she graduated at 16. So, yeah, and he was 21 when she was 12. And that's when he started, quote, dating her. So yeah, he started targeting her on behalf of this network that includes pedophiles. So he just died in Canada. I don't remember, I want to say maybe July, in or close to July last year, 2018. So, oh, and I normally have, thanks to God, I was born with healthy genes and all. I have good health as far as the functioning of my organs and everything. But being subjected to the poisonings put a strain on my liver. And I'm still recovering from that, and I'm still clearing out the toxins. And it actually reached to a visible discoloration in my right eye. Thank God I've not seen any in my left eye, which I'd be especially concerned about because I've had a suspicious, honestly, corneal transplant in that eye when I was 6 years old. So, but I'll probably go into some more information about that as far as connected another time. But with regard to these, you know, this organized predators network that uses doctors that do these non-consensual human experiments. So, and I mean, that doctor always had a nice bedside manner with me, but I have since found out things that indicate that he is part of that network, additional things besides things I was already suspicious of at the time at age 6, because I didn't know any legitimate reason why they would be doing this corneal transplant on me when I was 6 years old. And, you know, I was told, oh, they said, you know, world medical history, there's never been a corneal transplant on a child before, and this and that. And I did see, before I realized the extent of the computer hacking and all, and realized I had to be more careful about even doing my research online. I mean, I have to do it, but I have to be more careful about, you know, not having computer hackers all into my business that I'm researching and stuff when I'm researching when. So I had seen that, well, somebody who appears to be him, as far as I can tell, online. I mean, this is not with a physical check. Again, legitimate government intervention would probably be needed to verify this if I don't have resources to hire like a PI or something. But So somebody with his name and all, and that had been based in the same place he had been based, which was Los Angeles, was connected with Scientology. So it's popped up more than once conspicuously in my targeting. So I've never been a member, but yeah, there's been some of the people, like there was somebody who, he's probably ranks higher now, but he was an auditor for the Church of Scientology, and he defrauded me of some money and was setting me up and what have you. And he's somebody I met at University of Maryland, Baltimore County also, but I could go better into those another time. But this doctor, a way I found it was that I think now they don't do it, but at the time, you know, I've looked several times over several years, so periodically I'd see some things that are not necessarily always there to be seen online. And somebody was posting course completions, like a list of people who were finished, completed certain Scientology courses. And I saw this doctor's name, the doctor that relocated from Los Angeles to Toronto, Ontario, Canada to do my mysterious corneal transplant when I was 6 years old. A multiple 6, again, being an age where they love to do extra strange things, apparently as part of ritual. But at least I don't have discoloration in that eye from being poisoned so much of this year, 2019. And at least, thank God, I'm getting a break from it now. I'm here in Albany. So it's not been cool that they tried to actually, apparently they've been seeking to do the abduction thing when I go outside to walk to go get something to eat. But at least they've not been poisoning me here. So, and I'm actually very grateful. I am very grateful for that. And it's kind of sad that that would be one of the things on the checklist. Like, how's it going? Well, at least nobody's coming to spray under my door with pesticide and stuff, you know, so that I can't even breathe in the place I'm renting. So, and it is nicely quiet here also. There's people that are professionals and graduate students and stuff. Thank God. So they're not doing the neurological battering, you know, the sound, you know, and stuff that literally they've taken stuff before, like hard things to like bang and bang and bang and neurologically batter. It's a way of literally like hitting somebody in the head without being seen, you know, visibly hitting them in the head. And it can cause serious damage. In fact, I had to take a course of steroids for months to get inflammation, life-threatening inflammation down in my brain as a result of these people targeting me that way. But thankfully only one time. They seem like they would like to have like a repeat performance or something, but that's a reason that I switched to short-term housing for the time being, so that, you know, if that sort of thing and when that sort of thing is started up, I at least have the opportunity to move to a different you know, environment, to at least, until they started up there, to at least get a break from that, so I haven't been pushed to that stage as far as neurological emergency. But I think, so the last thing I wanted to document is that I did a video with it before. That was a relatively short, just like a 2-minute video, because my only focus on that video was to show that discoloration at that Sunnyside Gardens place where that poisoning was particularly conspicuous. So it's not as conspicuous, the discoloration in the white of my right eye now. So thank God it's clearing up. I'm hopeful it'll all clear up entirely, which would also be representative of my liver function coming back to recovering completely. But it's still somewhat there, and it's still gradually working its way out. So I've been out of there by March 1st was the official checkout. Now, mind you, and then I'd stayed, because of what was going on, I'd stayed in New Jersey for the last 2 weeks of March, but gradually, you know, it's still there, but this discoloration in the white of my right eye is still clearing. Let me see if I might have to, I won't be able to hold it as steady as I've kept it on wedged there, but I just want to show it, because I saw earlier I did a test, and I could see there, because it's mostly on right above my middle finger there. It's not like really that close to the colored part of my eye, the iris. It's closer to the inner corner
So, and you can compare with the, you know, the video that I had done, the 2-minute video that showed when it was taking up more surface area and it was darker. So it's taking up less surface area now and it's lighter, so it's clearing, but it's still there. So, okay, so I guess I'm gonna go to work on that response to try to nip that situation in the bud so they don't take that defamation and frame up attempt much further. Hopefully, we'll see. I have like another hour and a half to work on that because it's 1:31 now, March 31st, 2019. And what I'm planning to do is do a SnoEOawc note format. I'll put this video, or if I replace it, if I get a chance to replace it with a more cohesive video, I'll replace this, I'll put like an introductory video in the top of the note, and then I'll put like the supporting documentation, like anything I referenced in here that's been documented. I definitely always make sure to do that. Like I've done a couple interviews now, and that's something I'm happy to take the opportunity to do in a SnoEOawc note format. Is literally like, you know, I mentioned, you know, that I had done a 2-minute video and I'd shown that it was much more visible, the significantly more visible, the discoloration in the white of my eye from the poisoning. And so I'll go ahead and embed the video in the note, because one of the cool things about these notes now is I don't have to just put like a link that kind of takes more effort to like click into and maybe load and whatever. It lets you just like embed it, so you can actually just hit the play button right inside the note and stuff now. So I like this note format. You know, I can put for sure photographs and videos, and I'm not sure about a plain audio file, but in the worst case I could convert an audio file into a video file and embed it that way too. So I'll put everything I mentioned for sure in here, and some other related things, like the first place in this particular surge where the organized predators have been abusing my use of Airbnb. And again, not really suspicious of legitimate Airbnb officials. I'm thinking it has to do with the organized predators, computer hackers, really getting in between the communications there and pretending to be Airbnb representatives, things like that. And so the first that was conspicuous in the stretch was for the very beginning of January, and they just had like a pile of powder and mold and stuff that clearly was not healthy to breathe. And I photographed it and I uploaded it. So, okay. Thank you, and God bless you.